Ohio State trying to take full advantage of the turmoil around the country and finish off this class of 2026 strong. One of the guys that they're after, a guy that they offered over the summer, but ended up committing to Tennessee, that is Legend Bay. 5'9", 185 pounds, and this is one of those, yeah, he's small, but unbelievable athletes with the ball in his hands, and we don't see a ton of dudes like this. 10.23 100 meter, he's shifty, he makes absurd cuts, he can do it all. He can run, he can catch, he can even throw. They got just Faber a key in the class of 2026 at running back. Freshman running backs Bo Jackson and Isaiah West have now passed up a couple of sophomores as the best two running backs in the room, which means you may potentially lose a few guys to the portal. So you got to add another one in addition to Faber. Talked to Legend after his official visit, and he said it was absolutely insane. He loved everything about it. Tennessee's going to try to retain him this week. I don't think they'll be successful. I think a decision is coming soon, and Legend will be a Buckeye. Boom goes the dynamite. Welcome in Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. Appreciate you so much for joining me on a Monday, as we are here every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. and a banging show tonight. Boom indeed. The Buckeyes did do it. A decision did come. They got Legend. We'll talk about that and what is becoming a pretty unbelievable turn of events here as Mark Pantoni, Ryan Day, and the entire crew have really turned Ohio State recruiting strategy on its head this cycle and gone the total opposite direction of what we're used to. How have they got it done? Why have they gone about it this way? Where will this class end up? What developments did we see from Ohio State coming off of that Purdue game? What might we see them work in the next few weeks as we have similar games here on this 5-game stretch before we hit the Michigan game of subpar opponents? In fact, 5 opponents with 4 combined Big Ten victories is what we're facing leading into the game. So we'll talk about that as well. The Ohio State offensive line. Worries persist about the right side of the line. Might we see some changes coming soon to the starting lineup? And Saturday in Happy Valley, Indiana and Penn State played the biggest game of the year, the one we were all looking forward to all year long. Undefeated Indiana and winless Penn State with no head coach. We will review the dominoes that have fallen from that massive game over the weekend. Julian saying in the Heisman, and why it does matter, even if you don't like the award. It absolutely does matter. Thanks so much for joining me, friends. I appreciate you all so much. Something I do want to add to the show, super chats, I will make sure I read them. If you put something in the comment section and you want me to read it, sometimes when I'm scrolling through, put a question mark and I'll scroll through and that'll make it stand out. So if I catch it, I'll read it. If I try to go through between every segment and hit a couple of your things fast. So put that question mark. Please do share the show. We're here every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Buckeye Huddle Live, and I'm every day over at Juck on Bucks. We would love you to subscribe to both channels. That's the currency by which we operate in this YouTube deal. And the more subscriptions we get, the more motivated we are to put out more Buckeye content. And of course, you can find the best Buckeye coverage over at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where Tom and Tony are covering the team, Mark and Kevin covering recruiting, Ross Fulton on the X's and O's, Andrew Ellis, Chip Minich, myself, the biggest of any dedicated Ohio State news source in the world. No hyperbole. That's a fact. We got the most guys over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. I don't know how good we are, but we got the most. But Saturday, the Buckeyes beat Purdue 34-10. The first game not covering the spread all year as they gave up a garbage time touchdown, but it was worth it to get some of those young guys in there. A lot of people calling this a boring game. Heck, one of the reporters even said in Ryan Day's post-game press conference, it felt like a scrimmage. I don't think Ryan Day liked that very much, as he respects Barry Odom a great deal. And, well, that's just kind of rude to call it a scrimmage. But I thoroughly enjoyed the game because we got to see some of the young guys, quite a few of the young guys. In addition to that, we got to see quite a few rushing yards, and we would have seen even more. So Michigan the week prior against Purdue had rushed for 250 yards, and I was really hoping that the Buckeyes could put some kind of output like that on Purdue as well on the ground. And they would have gotten 240 had Bo Jackson's first run stood. The first run, of course, was called back by the book. Sure, it was a block in the back by Jeremiah Smith. Did it affect the play? Absolutely not. It's one that we usually see the ref leave it in the pocket. He chose not to. So there it is. And the Buckeyes don't get that 240. But the running game looked a lot better. It looked a lot better than usual. And as we see Ohio State rolling into another game this Saturday in another 30-ish point spread against UCLA under the lights, what are we going to see? The third night game of the year, second Big Ten game of the year at night at the Shoe. We got a big visitor list, and it should be a pretty interesting one. I'll tell you what I'll enjoy, seeing UCLA for the first time coming in as a Big Ten opponent. If nothing else, the uniform matchup. These are two of my favorites. Of course, if they were wearing the blues, it would be better. The UCLA blue and golds, the Ohio State scarlet and gray. To see that Keller on Keller matchup on the field would be amazing. And Ohio State has now played, of the newbies, Oregon, Washington. Now they'll get UCLA under the belt. And unbelievably, if you were to do the schedule when these four teams first entered the Big Ten, the biggest brand in the Big Ten, Ohio State, the biggest brand of the new ones coming in, USC, the history between Ohio State and USC, they will not play in the first 2 years. And that is such an unbelievable fail by the Big Ten scheduling that they did not match up USC and Ohio State in the first 2 years. Nonetheless, I think you still have added in these four West Coast teams an awesome amount of excitement to the Big Ten now. The league feels so much different. It feels so much different than it used to, adding these guys in. Even Washington is performing in a way that I don't think we expected right off the rip. And unfortunately, they just lost to Wisconsin in an unbelievable game. And Wisconsin beat them 13-10. Wisconsin's punter was their leading passer on the day with 24 passing yards, and somehow they beat Washington. It was at Wisconsin. I felt so good for Luke Fickell, and I felt so good for the Wisconsin fans. They went nuts. It was like they won something huge, and it was like, man, it was just an awesome sight, man. You guys should look for it. It's really cool to see how they reacted after the season they've been through, which has just been horrible. And he never lost the team, and that's why he'll be back next year. He never lost that team. They were fighting and fighting and fighting, so props to them. But when we talk about these four West Coast teams, I love how they're dressed, man. You got four of my favorite uniform and color sets of these four West Coast teams. As for UCLA, similar to Purdue, similar to Wisconsin, similar to Penn State, and similar to Rutgers coming up, not going to be a competitive game. UCLA started off with 4 losses. Then they fired Deshaun Foster, and then they ran off 3 straight, beating lowly Penn State, Michigan State, and Maryland. Well, now they're 3-3, 3-6 overall. And as of Saturday, they dropped another one at home to Nebraska, 28-21. Nebraska with no Dylan Raiola. The kid that came in against USC for Dylan Raiola when he got hurt, who could do absolutely nothing against UCLA, went out against UCLA, won the Big Ten Freshman of the Week, going 13 for 15 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against UCLA. I think Julian's going to be able to name his number against UCLA. Let me rephrase that. I think Ryan Day is going to be able to pick his number for him. Maybe we'll even see Lincoln Keenholz in there like we did early against Purdue. How did everybody feel about that? A lot of people hating on that move for a couple of reasons. One, Julian is in the midst of the Heisman Trophy race. So you pull him off and you potentially take away a potential touchdown for him. But 2, there's a lot of people who just can't stand pulling the starting quarterback out of the game. They hate it, and I understand that. I kind of like that package. I kind of like putting that on film, something people have to plan for. And in addition to that, we know that Lincoln can throw the ball. But boy, I thought he looked really good and aggressive in that run. And it was like, man, that looks a little different right there. Kind of exciting. And the funny thing is we think back to the McCord-Devin Brown situation. And Devin Brown was supposed to be that guy, right? He was supposed to be that guy. And Devin Brown versus Lincoln Keenholz athletically is so flipping far apart. I can't even begin to describe it. That's how poor of an athlete McCord was. At any rate, Nebraska, 129 rushing yards for Emmert Johnson, their stud running back against UCLA. Nebraska had 156 total rushing yards against them. I'd love to see this Ohio State rushing game this Saturday continue to churn. As for the running backs for the Buckeyes, I think we finally established the hierarchy that we've seen coming with Bo Jackson and Isaiah West as the 1-2. We finally got to see Isaiah West really assume that number 2 role, get in a bit of a rhythm, get some consecutive series. It just felt choppy the way they were getting him in there here and there. he actually got to get a feel for the game. And in doing so, in 9 carries, he rushed for 60 yards. I think it measured out to 6.6 yards a carry, which was fantastic. He also had 3 explosive runs of over 10 yards in just 9 carries. And he had 3 missed tackles forced. 3 missed tackle forced. And that actually increased his average. He is now causing just over, I think, every 3rd carry, like 3.3 carries, he's causing a missed tackle. And I was going through some stats of all the running backs in the country to see kind of where that fits in, where that average, how many of those, or how many carries are you, how many, let's see, how do I phrase this? How many carries per missed tackles? So 1 every 3.3. Anyway, it was like top 10% in the country. And it's fantastic. So Isaiah West has a real knack, and he always has, for just making guys miss or breaking tackles. And at 18 years old, he's just a darn good back, man. And we got the updated statistics here for those backs here. Let me pull these up as we sit here through, where's this daggum thing? Here we go. So here are the updated statistics for the guys here, with Bo with 94 carries now, West with 34, Jimmy DePeoples with 52, the Donaldson with 72. We see our yards per carry there, and it all kind of measures out to exactly what we would think, that Bo and West are up there on the top. Yards after contact, Bo with 4.6, and of course his ability to break off the chunk yardage just really helped that. West with 3.3. The missed tackles forced is that stat where Isaiah West really shines, with 12 missed tackles forced, almost as much as Bo. And James Peoples has added quite a few of those in the recent weeks. So shout out to him as he's been running better. And I guess the question is, moving forward here, as we roll into the final 2 games before the game, is, are we going to see them pare down the running backs? Are we going to see potentially a plan to roll into the postseason and the Michigan game, the Big Ten championship game, with 2 primary backs? Or are we going to continue to see this kind of 4-back system where you got 2 primary backs, your short yardage specialist, and then you're bringing in that 4th back? Personally, I think it prevents guys from getting in a rhythm. I thought that you could see how much better Isaiah ran when he was in a rhythm. I thought the same for Bo, but you were able to do that while still playing all 4. However, you did play 76 plays this game, which is 16 plays more than usual. So, I don't know that you normally have that many options. I have been very critical of CJ Donaldson as frankly being a subpar short yardage back, but against Purdue, he looked damn good. He was the best game he's played. He had 5 carries, and he actually ran like a short yardage power back should, got his pad level low, drove through a dude or 2 dudes. It was like, yeah, that's how that's supposed to look finally. And props to him. So if they're going to keep using him in that role and he runs like that, all good. Now, on the offensive line, we saw right tackle Phil Daniels, one of my favorites, but he's not been playing great recently, and he was out. He was dinged up. He was downright bad against Wisconsin. He wasn't too good against Illinois, and I'm a huge fan of his, but as a run blocker, he's a madman, a monster. When it comes to pass sets, sometimes his sloppy footwork just kind of gets him all out of position. And we got to see 2nd year Ian Moore, a blue chipper, top 200 kid out of Indiana, in his 2nd year make his first start ever for the Buckeyes. And he actually was Ohio State's 2nd rated blocker for the day on PFF, right behind Austin Cerebell, which kind of lines up with how it looked, man. He looked really, really solid. Then, of course, Tegra Shabola, who consistently is Ohio State's, number 5 or number 6 guy on the team as far as the offensive line goes. Usually you can count on Tegra Shabola for getting a penalty or missing a few assignments almost every week. And Josh Padilla, it looked like heading into that game, we were going to potentially start to see Josh Padilla eat into more of his snaps, as Padilla had gotten up to like 25 snaps in the prior game after it had just been about 15. So then we see it go down because he gets injured. And of course, he's out for the Purdue game. So Ohio State, you figure Tegra's going to play the whole game. No, they got Gabe Van Sickle and they put him in that role. And it seems like they're consistently trying to find another option at right guard to potentially be able to pivot out of Tegra. And Ryan Day said that Josh Padilla might need a week, might need two. Now I think as far as Padilla, you might be looking at a scenario where it's going to be too late for him to, supplant Tegra for a starting role as you got one more game and with Rutgers after this game, and then you roll into the game. So, it's pretty close call. Gabe Van Sickle had some good, had some bad, but Tegra is going to lead the offensive line in blown assignments and or penalties or both every game. And that's just something I think most of us have come to accept. He also has some really good plays too, but he just consistently has these brain farts with the penalties, with the blown assignments. He can't pick up a twist ever. And, it leads to bad things. It leads to blown up plays. UCLA offensively against Nebraska, Nico was 17 for 25 for 191 and 2 touchdowns, also credited with 15 carries and 86 yards. UCLA rushed for 157 total. So UCLA offensively, it looks like it's going to be an Arvell game in the spiral. A8 against Purdue had his most nondescript game we've seen all year. I don't think he might have registered one tackle on the game, not much action at all. That'll be a lot different. That'll be a lot different because Nico's going to try him. Nico's definitely going to try him. We remember the Tennessee game. Nico was feeling himself, man. Of course, he was the only one that could get anything going, but he was trying to run and run a lot. Got his dome cracked a couple of times, but he's going to try it again. And this is going to be fun. It's going to be fun watching Arvell spy him. Remember, Penn State tried to have Dennis Sutton spy Nico. That didn't work out too well for the 270-pounder. We talked in the post-game show about Zion Grady, and I have been talking for a few weeks that I kind of would like to start to see a little more Zion Grady eating into Bo Atkinson's snaps, because frankly, I think he's better already than Bo Atkinson. And sure enough, Zion Grady had 15 snaps to Atkinson's 9, and they weren't garbage time snaps for Grady. They were primetime snaps, and he looked good. He looked real good. And if we're looking forward to next year, and we talk about, who's going to start, you got Kenyatta Jackson potentially going to the NFL. Well, you got the group of Bo Atkinson, Logan George, CJ Hicks, Zion Grady, Dominic Kirks, Kari Wilder coming in as a true freshman. I think Zion is your number one guy. And then it probably some order, some kind of platoon opposite him. And Kari might actually be right up there in your top 2 or 3 in that platoon, definitely in your top 3. I think he's an impact freshman. So this line is getting younger, this defensive line. And I want to see more Zion Grady to get him ready. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of him as we move into the primetime games here. And I think it's important in that UCLA game, in that Rutgers game, that we see more Zion Grady, because it looks like he's about to pop, man. He's almost there. He had a bull rush that was, all right, the power is there. He's dominating tackles now, and we're about to see it from him. We really are. So very excited about Zion Grady. I think regardless of whether or not Kenyatta Jackson goes to the NFL, he is going to be a starting defensive end on this team next year. And if Kenyatta stays, it'll be opposite Kenyatta. If Kenyatta goes, then it'll be Zion Grady and potentially a portal addition or some kind of platoon. On the inside, Edric Houston won the starting role back. 27 snaps for Eddie, and he started off with a bang. Started off with a big, massive play, and he was fired up, and his confidence is back. And I have thought for a while now that it's his confidence here that's been suffering. He looked fantastic, and that's like 4 games in a row where he's played, consecutively better than the last. And that's awesome. That's huge. We need that. The Buckeyes defense only missed 1 tackle on the entire day, which is fantastic. And when we talk about this schedule finishing the way it is finishing before the game with the 5 opponents with 4 combined Big Ten wins, I think there's a lot of value in playing a high-level game recently before you head into that run where all the games are so important. The Buckeyes don't have the benefit of that this year due to the schedule and due to the Penn State implosion, playing these 5 very overmatched opponents, but they do have the opportunity to tinker around with things like this, play younger guys, get experience for younger guys. I was very happy to see them take full advantage of it We even saw Riley Pettijohn in on the first series, for instance, which was a huge surprise. And that kind of experience in a real game early on for guys that we know are going to be starting next year or potentially starting next year, I think is invaluable. So will we see more of that against UCLA? And I think we will, but we'll talk about UCLA a little more and the potential of things we might see and the questions we have about that game on Wednesday's show. Moving right along here, if you wouldn't mind, please like the show for those of you who have joined us recently. Julian saying in the thick of the Heisman Trophy race, and the Heisman Trophy does matter. The Heisman Trophy is an insane recruiting tool for quarterbacks. If CJ Stroud would have won the Heisman, Julian Sayin would have been a Buckeye before he committed to Alabama. It absolutely matters. And despite this nonsense garbage that we heard after Saturday, Julian Sayin is still the favorite, plus 160 to everybody's favorite accountant, Fernando Mendoza, plus 170. The Hoosiers, of course, rolled into Penn State as 14.5-point favorites, up 20-17 in the fourth after Indiana's Golden Boy threw an interception in Penn State's territory that Penn State turned into a touchdown, taking a lead in the game, 24-20. And that remained like that until Indiana took over with 1:15 left. And Mendoza led Indiana down the field on a game-winning drive that culminated in a ridiculous touchdown catch by Omar Cooper that led to one of the most obnoxiously performative calls of Gus Johnson's illustrious career, which is really saying something for the guy that always puts a little extra on it. This was the most extra I've ever heard, including people talking about it, saying he lost his voice. He was so excited. The hell he did, man. It was all an act. It was so obnoxious. I couldn't stand it. And the reaction around the country was swift. It was everywhere. And the reaction was Fernando Mendoza just won the Heisman. Give it to him. Give it to him. Talks about people putting in their votes early. Putting in their votes early. Keep in mind, the top four contenders for the Heisman Trophy are literally all going to play each other in the conference championship games, with Marcel Reed and Ty Simpson matching up in the SEC championship game. Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sayin matching up in the Big Ten championship game. And those championship games take place 2 days before Heisman voting is due. Fernando Mendoza put his team in a bad situation that he had to come back from, and he made up for it, and he did great, and he looked great, and it was awesome. Julian Sayin's never put his team in that position. But the double standards that we have to live by as Ohio State fans, supporters, program, it's ridiculous, and it happens every year. For instance, what happened the last time Ohio State was losing to a subpar team, and the quarterback needed to drive down the field at the end of the game to win the game? What happened last year? It happened at home against Nebraska. Nebraska played a game. They were game, and Ohio State was flat, coming off a bye week after they had lost at Oregon, and they looked like a team that didn't even want to be there. They also had Zen Michalski playing that day. If you remember, it was one of the worst performances you've ever seen from a starting left tackle, and things were not going well. And Will Howard gamed up and led them on a game-winning drive to win the game. What was the talking point after that game? Was it Will Howard for Heisman? It certainly wasn't that, man. It was used to bash Ohio State. And to be honest, I still hear about it today. I still hear about it this year. People bring up the Nebraska game last year as a way to knock Ohio State. Now, I don't knock Indiana for having to play a close game to beat Penn State. It happens throughout the course of a season. You got a different team every week. And to be honest, Penn State at Ohio Stadium, they played a game first half against the Buckeyes. It wasn't until they realized they were very outmatched in the second half that you saw them quit. But they started off hot. Now, they started off the same way against Indiana, but they were able to stay in the game because Ohio State is better than Indiana, and Penn State was able to keep with Indiana. Now, we saw Curt Cignetti after the game acting like they just won the Big Ten championship in Happy Valley, and Fernando Mendoza, everybody's favorite accountant, the way this guy talks, like, it's quite a story, man. It's quite a story. He's an interesting soundbite. Cignetti's an interesting soundbite, and the whole story is like, yeah, man, it's got all the juice to it. But Julian Sayin just consistently goes out in a very boring way and lights everybody up to ridiculous record-breaking numbers. And he's going to get his opportunity to win the Heisman. He gets to go to Ann Arbor to end the streak and help his coach, right? His coach who absolutely cannot lose that game. Michigan will only have 2 losses on the year, so it'll be viewed as a very good Michigan team. And then he gets to square off against Mendoza and Cignetti in Indiana. And Indiana got exposed to me. They got exposed. I had a really strong suspicion that they could not hold up against a program that had trench play like Penn State's. And I think that that absolutely held true in that game. And I'm supposed to believe that that offensive line is going to protect that kid against K-Mac and Arvell and KJ and Curry. Incapable. I'll tell you what else. I don't think Oregon's that good. I don't know how they let Indiana come into Autzen Stadium and dominate them the way they did. Oregon goes and beats Iowa in Kinnick by 2 points in the most ridiculously weird game you've ever seen, as the 2-point victory margin from Oregon resulted from Iowa making a special teams blunder and giving Oregon a safety, which is how we've seen Iowa beat people forever. So total role reversal, absolutely nuts. But it's very, very clear that the Buckeyes are not just the class of the country, but the clear class of the Big Ten. Neither Indiana nor Oregon are very close to the level that the Buckeyes are on this year. Indiana was the opponent that's coming into this weekend, this last Saturday. I would have said, if you had asked me, who would you have the most nerves about facing in the playoffs? It would have been Indiana. I no longer feel that way. I now feel that Texas A&M presents the most difficult matchup for Ohio State. And they have a sensational mobile quarterback. They can run the ball. They can also pass the ball. They also have a very nasty defensive line up front. And the Ohio State offensive line, particularly on the right side of the offensive line when it comes to pass pro, has not been great. I don't think they can beat Ohio State, but I think they present the toughest matchup. It's not Indiana. The Buckeyes are going to smoke Indiana again. Not stressed about that one bit anymore. And I hate them so much. I really hate them. The fans, the way they're acting, they're so obnoxious. And to be clear, if they were playing Alabama in the playoffs, it's Roll Tide in Juckeye Studio. Like, that's how irritated I am with the Big Ten family over here. Not happening. I don't want them experiencing any joy. No more. Now, let's move on to the Ohio State recruiting surge that has been one of the more bizarre things we've seen in a while. We have never experienced under Ryan Day or Mark Pantoni this type of class. I mean, this is just wild. The normal scenario that we follow every year is Ohio State comes out hot, gets most of the class pretty much done with a couple of things they got to tune up here and there, and then they end up 1 or 2 early on in the rankings, and then we sit and we watch people slowly pass Ohio State, and we try to hope we can hold on to our guys from flipping elsewhere as guys are coming after our guys, and we always wish that we were the guys who were going on the offense and going to get people. But we already got everybody we need. Okay, yeah, it's true. And that is how it goes every single year. And that's why there was a lot of people really upset with this class of 2026 when Ohio State was sitting for the longest time as the 9th ranked class in the country. And it was very difficult for anybody to really envision what we're actually seeing right now, which is this huge surge of aggression from the Buckeyes towards the end of the class. As we saw pretty early on in the cycle that almost all of the top 300 prospects were committed. It happened really fast and really early. And the attitude around this class coming off a national championship was very much, how are we going backwards in recruiting? We just won a national championship. Forget a recruiting bump. We're getting a recruiting bump down. And there was a whole lot of negativity surrounding the class of 2026, but not just the class of 2026. There's a lot of fear attached to that as to what it means for the future, because there's this financial component attached to this now. Does this mean this is what we should expect in this climate moving forward in this new modern era of recruiting? I never believed that would be the case, because I never believed Ohio State would be satisfied with barely scratching the surface of the top 10 in recruiting. I think it's a unique situation this year. But my opinion on this class was always much higher because I think that much like Ryan Day's been talking about recently, evaluations have never been as important as they are right now. And I think Ohio State really did some great evaluations in this class of 2026. And I think that it'll prove out, regardless of where it ranks, to perform on the field as one of the better classes in the country, regardless of the 9th or 29th ranking. But nobody wants to hear that. And I get it. You're Ohio State coming off a national championship, and you had so many high profile misses, which also added to the negativity attached to this class. There was a lot of high profile ones, guys. And then you got the whole money issue with Ohio State choosing to invest a ton of time recruiting a ton of guys that we all knew were going to get ridiculous offers from other places at some point. And we knew Ohio State would be coming in with substantially less money. And we saw a boatload of these very high profile losses and these very high profile guys. And we all kind of slowly came to the conclusion at some point that, all right, man, it's pretty clear that the attitude of the kid coming out of high school now, this was a slow process. It happened over the course of 2-3 cycles, but there was a stigma at first of taking the highest offer. And then it started to become a little more accepted and a little more accepted. And now they kind of admit it a lot. And it's just like, there's no more stigma attached. It's who's going to pay me more and also give me opportunity, but who's going to pay me more is option. That's the thing that they say first. And, you get it because a lot of us would operate like this in our careers as well, but it took a little while to accept, but that's what it is. And Ohio State pays freshmen. They pay some freshmen really, really well, and not just Jeremiah Smith level prospects, but there's a big difference between paying a top freshman $400,000 and $1.2 million. And it ended up with a lot of wasted time. A guy like Deuce Gerald's, for instance, who Ohio State had been in on since he was a 9th grader, who loved Ohio State and looked for years like he was going to be in Ohio State's class. Not a 5-star guy, an undersized defensive tackle. And when it came crunch time, this kid who wanted to be a Buckeye for years ends up changing his mind when you start seeing some stupid offers come in, one of which was $1 million by our rival, which was way over market value for an undersized defensive tackle. Luke Wafel, Ohio State went way out of their comfort zone to get him to decommit from USC silently and come to the Ohio State side of things. Then USC ripped him back with a ridiculous offer that Ohio State was just not going to match because they were already outside their comfort zone. But you run into this problem constantly where there's always one idiot in the room that's willing to pay way more than market value for every top prospect. There's always one or two idiots willing to go there. And that really throws things off, which is why so many people wanted a salary cap. So everybody's playing on somewhat of an equal playing field, and you don't have that idiot coming in and throwing off the entire marketplace, raising what's expected moving forward. And of course, the House settlement provides that salary cap on the revenue share end and an attempt to make NIL as it was intended to be, true NIL. But Ohio State put themselves in a delicate situation with Ross Bjork choosing to be the athletic director, who was kind of the face of the settlement that many thought would fail quickly and eventually get blown up altogether. And the writing was on the wall that if Ross Bjork attached himself to this, when other schools were pivoting, Ohio State would be stuck because he's going to look like a big hypocrite if Ohio State starts pivoting, right, and not backing this thing that he's come out and taken this stance against or this stance for. And it's just kind of pigeonholing Ohio State as to where they need to be. And as it stands now, we are months after this thing is passed. The enforcement arm of this, the CSC, has 4 employees. Like, these are the people that are supposed to police this entire thing. The official rules and punishments have still not been agreed upon nor released. And we're months into this thing. Ross Bjork and supporters of this always said that it needed to go through Congress or it's not going to work. It was supposed to fly through the Senate and get held up by the House. And it's still clogged up in the Senate, the part that it was supposed, the one it was supposed to fly through. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen the way some were hoping it was going to happen. And it might just get shot down to holy hell. But on the off chance that it gets upheld, Ohio State is perfectly set up for it. Better than anybody else, in my opinion, and Ross's too, But as we followed this stuff, and there's a lot more detail that I've explained a lot of times, but I'm sure a lot of you who watch me all the time are bored with it because we've talked about it so many times. But what I wanted to get into tonight is the entire point is the outlook on this class was extremely poor because of all this stuff. The poorest I've seen in Ohio State recruiting in a long, long time. But important to note, not the fault of the football staff, in my opinion. I think the football staff has done a tremendous job. And despite a lot of needs out there towards the end, it did look like over the last month and a half that Ohio State was kind of backfilling numbers with a lot of project guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need project guys. In fact, you need more project guys in this modern era than you ever have before. Guys who are going to stick with the system, play in your system, be grateful to be there, and be grateful to develop, and guys that you think can develop. Because the strategy previously of just stacking the highest, you're going to go get four guys at one position. You're going to get the highest 4 rated guys you can get that you like, right? That's not the strategy anymore. Because if you go get 4 stars, they're coming in with how fast can I play? And if I can't play here, I need to go play somewhere else. Well, now you mix in a couple 3-star developmental guys on the 4-year plan with your 2 very highly rated guys. And now you got the guys who are supposedly going to start early and the other guys who are happy to be there, who are going to be on the 4-year plan and be happy to develop and not ready to run out the door. So Ohio State is somewhat adjusted here. And as a result, we have seen a lot more 3-star prospects than we've ever seen. You got, for instance, in this class in the 247 composite, 8 3-stars already. Last year, there were 5. The year before, there were 3. The year before, there was 1. So we're seeing that, but a lot of that is happening by design. And we're seeing the same thing at Alabama and Georgia. But the last couple of weeks, we've seen Ohio State absolutely flip the script and attack the end of this class like we are not used to seeing, man. And it has been exhilarating. I mean, exhilarating to those of us who follow this stuff, particularly to those of us who already like the class because it just keeps getting better. First, we saw Ohio State grab 2 Ohio offensive linemen in Landry Breed and legacy Mason Wilhelm, 2 3-star Ohio boys on the offensive line. And it has been proven time and time again that you can get massive hits with 3-star Ohio offensive linemen. You just got to pick the right ones. There is success there to be had. Austin Sareveld is a 3-star offensive lineman from Ohio who is your captain lineman, starting left tackle, and going to be an NFL guard. These dudes are there. You just got to find the right ones. We go through a list of 20 of them right now, but pick the right ones. Success is there to be had. Then Matt Guerrieri added Kamari Bing a couple of weeks ago. That is a 3-star late blooming safety who is not a 3-star talent out of St. Francis in Maryland, a position in need. You needed a safety. This guy feels like a potential starter at free safety at some point. And then it really heated up last week when Ohio State and Tim Walton added Jay Timmons. Jay Timmons out of Pittsburgh is Rivals' number 2 cornerback in the country. And we certainly weren't expecting that level of cornerback joining this class this late, joining Jordan Thomas. Jordan Thomas, a very underrated corner, still a top 100 kid, but Ohio State's literal number 1 guy on their board, which I trust their evaluation more than anybody else. And that is quite a beastly pair for Tim Walton with Timmons and Jordan Thomas. I mean, that looks like one of his best pairs. And this dude consistently has a beastly pair. Then Sunday, Ohio State added what I believe is their second most talented defensive tackle in their now 4-man defensive tackle class, Emmanuel Ruffin, a 6'4", 310-pounder out of Bessemer, Alabama, which is another important little thing here is now Ohio State has grabbed 3 kids in the last 2 cycles out of Alabama, all 3 of them top 100 kids at least one site. And the more people see someone doing something from their home, that they're watching these guys ahead of them. Well, okay, well, Zion went to Ohio State and Turbo went to Ohio State. Maybe I can go to Ohio State. And these things seem more normalized. And, that's unfortunately how we've seen a lot of the top tier talent in Ohio start to leave Ohio. All right, well, he left. I can leave too. Same thing with Alabama. And now we're seeing it come the other way as Emmanuel Ruffin, a top 20 defensive lineman in the country, looks to be a future one tech at Ohio State, despite at that size playing a lot of defensive end in high school, even sometimes stand-up defensive end, which kind of speaks to his athleticism at that size, but strong, heavy hands, gets off blocks so easily. Not a twitched up guy for his size, but twitched up guys at that size cost you a couple $1 million. An effort guy, a guy who will track it down from the backside down the field, and a guy that clearly loves football, violent football player, which, that's one of the things that really stands out on a lot of these guys in Ohio State's class. Violent football player. They're getting dogs here. And the Buckeyes offered him a long time ago, and he came up for a visit, and he whittled his list down to Ohio State or LSU. He set his date. He was going to announce his commitment. And the Buckeyes kind of weren't interested at that point, and neither was LSU. So he postponed his decision, and he ended up committing to Colorado. And some time passed, some senior film came out, and Ohio State came calling again. And I love the philosophy here that we're seeing. Number one, I love that they were able to do so many senior evaluations, evaluating the senior film, and then really making sure, because as we talk about, evaluations have never been more important. You want the most data you can get. So they have allowed themselves to view a lot of this senior film. But I love the philosophy that we're seeing this year that I think we're going to continue to see moving forward. And that is, you went from 85 to 105, 90 to 105, or 85 to 105. Now you are trying to not go over 90 guys, right? They can go to 105, but if you're going to take some more flyers or you're going to use a couple extra numbers, now they go against your revenue share cap space, every guy you bring in. But if you're going to take a few flyers, take them on the line of scrimmage, man. Take them on the offensive line, take them on the defensive line. They are the most expensive guys to add in the portal. And when you are, there's a lot of people who say, just grab them in the portal. You don't need them, grab them in the portal. Like, offensive and defensive linemen are the most expensive guys. So if you add a few more in each class, you give yourself a little more opportunity. You're taking one more shot each class at a guy that pans out. And to put a bunch of your salary cap on a portal guy that you think is going to come in and be your starter at left tackle, for instance, well, we've seen that blow up now. If you swing and miss in an era of a cap, like, you're screwed. That's a lot of money. So if you bring more guys in-house and you got them coming up through your system, you know exactly what you have. So take a few more shots every class on the offensive and defensive line. These guys will naturally filter themselves out, and it sounds like a cold-hearted way, but it's actually a huge benefit to the player and the program, because the player comes into Ohio State, and if he can't quite cut it at Ohio State, he is a very desirable guy in the transfer portal market, because people want guys who come from Bama or Ohio State or Georgia in the portal. It makes them more valuable. It fires up a fan base. So, we got a guy from Ohio State, and he gets paid, and he gets better coaching while he's at Ohio State. So it kind of works out for everybody in this system. So take a few more guys in the trenches. I think we're seeing that. So Ruffin, a huge get here. And to me, Damari Simeon, number one guy, 3 tech. Ruffin, number 2 guy, your 1 tech. And then I think you got your developmental guy in Cam Brickle. And then you got your super unique guy in Jameer Perez, a 3-star 1 tech you absolutely had to have, because he's an Ohio kid, he's a Glenville kid, and he's a 340-pound 1 tech. And you talk about expensive, a quality 1 tech in the transfer portal is about as expensive as you can get. A 340-pounder, the more rare the body type, the more the cost. Now, if Caden McDonald ends up going to the NFL, you've got Will Smith, Eric Mensah, Max Roy, Emmanuel Ruffin, and Jameer Perez. So you add one more body into that position, which is important. And at 3 tech, Edric Houston next year will step up as Ty Malone's gone. Then you got Jarquez Carter, Damari Simeon, Jason Moore, Trajan Odom. So you get one more guy into that mix. And it feels like the Buckeyes are getting younger on the defensive line, which is not great, But this is the same thing we're seeing happening around a lot of schools, right? Texas was in this situation this year. That's why they went out and got those 5 defensive linemen in the portal. They had a bunch of freshmen and sophomores, and they were scared, so they went and got Hero Canoe. So that was Sunday. Then Monday, today, we see Legend Bay, the best athlete in the state of Texas. Legend is an Ohio State Buckeye now. And Legend, a high school quarterback at 5'9.5", 180 pounds, not just shifty and smooth, but powerful through contact, really good contact balance. And his vision in the open field to convert a little bit of space into a touchdown is unbelievable, man. This guy, not just ridiculous as far as production on the football field, but a track star as well. A 10.23 wind-aided 100-meter dash. Got a 10.7, not wind-aided. But I had somebody say to me the other day in a post I made about Legend, too small. Ohio State can get a 6 foot, 220-pounder that can do the same thing. I don't think that guy understands what a 10.23 is. Jameer Brown is a 10.3 guy. Jameer Brown is the fastest guy out of the state of Ohio since Ted Ginn. So I think that having Jameer Brown and Legend Bay on the same team is unbelievable when it comes to speed. And to put this in further context with guys currently on the roster, James Peoples, for instance, 100-meter dash, 12.41. We're talking about 2 seconds difference in 100 meters, which is a short distance. Turbo Rogers, guy's named Turbo, 11.1. Legend is ridiculous fast. And Legend in 2024, 41 total touchdowns, 28 of them rushing, finished his career with 100 touchdowns, more than 4,000 rushing, 4,000 passing. Texas is 6A, top division in Texas, offensive MVP as a junior. That's as big as it gets in high school football. Not a 5-star, but a 5-star talent. Not a 5-star because a 5-star, if there's 32 5-stars in the class. If you are a guy who makes the rankings, you get graded by the draft. If you get a 5-star, well, you get an A if that 5-star gets drafted in the first round. And Legend Bay's size is going to prevent him from being drafted in the first round, but that doesn't keep him from being a 5-star talent in college. And everybody really wanted him. Carlos Loughlin had offered him back in November when Loughlin was down there in Texas, seeing some other prospects. And I thought at the time it was more just kind of a token offer, a feeler. And this is an incredibly exciting player, but a guy who Ohio State has never really been super successful with, guys in this mold, right? We've had guys like this before. We've never seen it work. And you also look at Ohio State in the running back position, and they got a type. The type is 5'11" to 6'1", 205 to 215 pounds. That's the prototype. And that's usually the guy, at least for Tony Alford, we always saw Ohio State try to go after. We've seen with Carlos Loughlin, he's not concerned about that in any type of way. He's looking for a particular guy, not a specific type. We saw that by him bringing in a 240-pounder out of West Virginia and now a 185-pound running back out of Texas. And I love running backs. My favorite position always has been. I love the different styles and different skill sets that it takes to be successful. So I'm super stoked about Legend Bay. And Oklahoma, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Notre Dame, the who's who of college football eventually got in on Legend Bay. And I thought after talking to him after his official visit that the Buckeyes had this locked down. These guys usually offer canned responses. This dude was stoked, man. He was just thrilled. And it was very apparent this was over. Unless Tennessee came with a massive offer, which they weren't, because they were recruiting him as a wide receiver. And as a wide receiver, they've got a couple of dogs at wide receiver already in this class. So they're not forking out big bucks for the 5'9.5" kid at wide receiver in their goofy offense. So to me, it was a done deal. Then we saw Texas come in with an offer just this last week. And I thought, here we go, man. Kid from Texas. It's the ultimate validation when you get that Texas offer as a kid from Texas. And it seemed like, man, they're going to come in and swipe this. Not so much, man. Legend is a Buckeye. So can Ohio State utilize him? And immediately over on the Buckeye Huddle board, a lot of people are saying, we've been here before with these kind of guys, man. The DeMario McCalls and the Jalen Gills. It just doesn't seem to work for us. And it's true that it takes a lot of effort and creativity to get the most out of these type of dudes, a lot of times coaches think they're gonna have they're gonna have these packages for them. And then when it comes crunch time and you got to actually do it and come up with this extra stuff, it feels like there's always a better option. And then we see them kind of get underutilized. And I can understand that. These guys generally do work out better in smaller schools where they're the top option, right? You have no choice but to build things around them. Like West Virginia always pops in mind, right? Or Oregon 15 years ago for these type of guys. And we've seen them be super successful at schools like that. But schools that consistently always have other really good options, it feels like they get a little underutilized. But Ohio State, the fact that they pitched him on, look, we want to use you like this, this, and this, which is in the return game, in the slot, out of the backfield, and they were excited about it, and they won it. Well, that makes me excited about it. Makes me excited that they're all the way in trying to use it. And we've never seen Ryan Day utilize a guy like this. We've never seen Brian Hartline utilize a guy like this. So to me, that gets me pumped up. And when we look at the playmakers now in this class of 2026, you got local running back Favor Akey is running back I really like. But it became clear that they were going to want another running back in the class. And when we're looking at another running back, you got Donaldson Donaldson gone next year. And then you've got two, they're going to be third-year guys next year in James Peoples and Sam Dixon. And then three, the freshmen this year will be second-year guys in Isaiah West, Bo Jackson, and Turbo Rogers, and then Favor Akey as the freshman. So you've got numbers there right now, but with James Peoples and Sam Williams Dixon, they're both pretty much passed by the two guys younger than them. And where does that leave them? Like in today's college football, we know what that generally leads to, but Ohio State has to cover their butts no matter what those guys are saying now, because the truth is there's only one transfer portal window now, and it's in the playoffs. And if you have, Ohio State has these meetings with everybody on the roster before the portal, and they talk it through. And there's, guys telling them, look, hey, I'm cool. I'm going to stay. And then you get closer to the portal to the end of it. What if a guy comes in and somebody gives him a ridiculous offer? What if it happens with several guys and they all come back to you and say, Coach, I know I said I was going to stay and I really want to, and I hate doing this for you, but I've got this opportunity now and I feel like I need to take it. So now you lose them. There is no making that up in the spring portal. There is no more spring portal. So if you lose a guy late in the portal and he wasn't planning on it or didn't notify you about it, which I don't think that would happen at Ohio State. I think everybody would be straight up with the staff, but you're still screwed. Whether you got, 3 days left, what are you going to do? Like the best backs are all off the market. So you need to make sure that you're covering your butt if you see the potential of something like this happening. And this is why we saw them, I think, going after Amari Latimer. That's the Wisconsin commit, who is a classic running back in that sense. And it looked like that was trending really positive for the Buckeyes. But Latimer, after, first off, he may stay at Wisconsin now that they won a game and Luke Fickell's been awarded another year. But they went and visited Miami after Ohio State. And then, matter of fact, they were just at Tennessee. So we'll see what happens with Latimer. It looks like it's not very likely now. But Legend, Ohio State has a grand idea of how to use him all across the offense and on special teams. He was blown away from it. So I'm excited. I'm very excited about Legend, and I will play a little bit of Legend here as I go through some of your comments before I come on, Chuck, pull this idiot up. I don't know why this is so hard for me every doggone time. There we go. That's the view we're looking for. And Legend, a quarterback. A lot of people thought that Turbo was going to be used more like Legend is going to be used. And obviously we haven't seen Turbo this year. I never thought that. I thought Turbo would be more of just a standard running back because I think a lot of people thought that Turbo was more built like Legend. Now Legend's tough. Legend's strong. He's got a strong lower half, but Turbo has really, really a thick thighs. Like he's a strong kid and he's up to about 195 pounds now. So he's not far off that 210 pounds. So, I mean, you look at some of the moves on Legend and the acceleration from a standstill, it's just wild, man. Special cat. And the highlight film just goes on and on and on. So there's a little bit of him. Here is his player card. As we look, he is a top 361 player in the country. They list him at 5'10 and a half, which is, I don't believe, accurate. And Emmanuel Ruffin, 247, 123rd ranked prospect in the country. The composite, 197th. Out of Bessemer, Alabama, 6'4", 295, and that is not a 295-pound man. He is a larger fellow than that. So that's what we got on all that, and I think that obviously the class is looking like it's cooking now. We've got some more things happening, and if you are someone who watches Buckeye Huddle, Mark and I tomorrow are recording a Skull Session, Ohio State recruiting podcast, and Mark has something, some things he wants to talk about. We're going to kind of recap the class, and then obviously there are still some more guys out there. There are some visits coming up here for the UCLA game. This won't be the last guy added. There's more coming. And when we look at the Buckeyes class now, they've gone from 9th up to 7th. And they are this far away from 6th, away from jumping Texas A&M, taking over that 6th spot. Could they actually potentially hop into that 5th spot? As we've talked forever about Ohio State losing or not getting the 5th, not getting in the top 5 for the first time in Ryan Day's career. What if it actually happens? It would be amazing. But there are a lot of people who are now yelling at the people who were very down on this class, saying, I told you idiots all along, they were going to do this at the end. You got all angry for nothing. Certainly not saying that to anybody, because the truth is Ohio State took advantage of a lot of situations here, which they absolutely should do. And we've never seen them act like this. So nobody really had any inclination that they were going to act like this. We've not seen them do this before. As far as a lot of these guys, man, I think that, there are a lot of dudes who found themselves in situations they didn't want to be in. And eventually that money looks like it's not the biggest priority, and they start getting a little anxiety, and the Buckeyes swooped, man, and they operated this flawlessly here towards the end. And we're going to see some more and more of it. So I'm super pumped about it. Obviously it's not really, like we're in the middle of the season, and I feel even silly talking about recruiting, but the truth is we're dealing with some games here that just, we're whooping everybody's butt, waiting for the game. And there's only so much I can talk about the game before I start getting anxiety about it. So recruiting it is, especially when there's so much fun action going on. But let me hit your chats here, if we got any chats that we're going to talk about before we pop out of here, as we are now at 57:50. Tomorrow, Ryan Day's press conference, guys. Of course, we always air it on Buckeye Huddle. I got to leave here early because it's at 11 instead of the usual noon. So I got to get out of here pretty early because, I'm coming from 2.5 hours away with my electric self-driving car that runs out of batteries on the way home. Woody's, hey, Jack, recruiting related question. What's your take on Teton having no in-state commits in 2026? I know the high school football isn't that great. I think it's unbelievable. The high school recruiting isn't that great. There are guys that are Michigan caliber in the state of Michigan, plenty of them. And there are obviously plenty of 3-star guys that you would want as developmental guys. I think it shows a real disconnect of Sharon Moore and Michigan. When you think about, could you imagine an Ohio State class with no Ohio kids? Like, we talk a lot in the benefit, and a lot of people talk about the benefit of Ohio kids is knowing the rivalry. I think there's so much more than that. But Sharon Moore is just tuned out, man. The guy, he doesn't get it. I hope they keep that guy forever. And obviously that sounds crazy, right? Because he's beat Ohio State twice, according to them. Not true. Not true. Kenny, what's up, buddy? Appreciate you. Mozart's Ghost says, Ryan Day seems much more comfortable in his own skin this year. The playoff run last year got him right. I would agree. He's even more just open and not as guarded. And it's kind of like, like it or not, this is what it is. And I love that. Jason, there isn't a Southern team that I like even a little. Lived in Texas for 12 years. That was fun. How'd you guys get on Lincoln Riley? Yeah, Justice Haynes had foot surgery. They're gonna need Jordan Marshall, but a lot of people saying that they think he'll return by the time of the game. I don't know if that's just I don't know how serious the surgery was. Ryan Day made Bjork cough up that cash. That cash he's been hoarding. It's working out good, man. It's working out good. What's up, Ryan? I appreciate you for being a member, buddy. Yeah, well, this is yeah, I mean, it is recruiting like Saban. I mean, I don't think this was the plan, but Saban was always just super opportunistic, you know. At the end of the class, I'm going to go take this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy, and what are you going to do about it? And the guys, it's great, man. They either begrudge Ohio State or take us for granted every award season. Our guys get overlooked. It's true. It's really crappy, man. It's a really crappy thing to the kids at Ohio State. And I can't stand it. But anyway, I appreciate you guys. And that will be the end of tonight's show. I will be back on Wednesday evening, of course, at 8 p.m. Tomorrow, my anniversary with my lovely lady, 11/11. And she kind of made it 11/11 so that I would never forget it. And then she reminded me about it today and I forgot. So I got to go do some stuff. All right. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. Chuck and Bucket Huddle Primetime out.